Good evening. Welcome into another edition of the PowerMizzou.com podcast. This is your Monday night episode, The State of the Tigers, brought to you here every single week by our friend James Carlton at State Farm Insurance in Webster Groves, Missouri. If you get in touch with James and you tell him you heard about the show on Power Mizzou, or heard about the agency on Power Mizzou, he's going to donate $25 to the NIL efforts of the school of your choice, as long as the school of your choice is the same as the school of his choice, which is the University of Missouri. The way you get in touch with James is online at carltoninsurance.net. You can give him a call at 314-961-4800. I can personally vouch for James and his office's customer service. He's been my insurance agent for the last couple months now. Very happy with everything over there. So get in touch with James. All right. Bills paid. Now we're going to get to the show, and do want to let you guys know in about 44 minutes now at 7:45, we're going to have Brandon Marcello, national 24/7 and CBS Sports college football writer. But Jarod Hamilton is simply your appetizer for the first 45 minutes. Jarod, lovely weekend seeing the leaves and the scenery in Western Massachusetts.
Yeah, it was awesome. I was telling my girlfriend how much I just enjoyed riding around, to be honest, just looking at stuff. And it's definitely in different regions of the country, obviously, people drive different. And so I'll just say that type of driving in the Northeast is more of what I'm accustomed to.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. My favorite scenery, just area of the country road trip that I've made doing this job was probably West Virginia. I flew into Pittsburgh and then drove up to Morgantown. That's a very cool drive.
Yeah, those mountains and stuff.
Yeah,
it's pretty nice. Yeah,
a little bit better than, say, the Atlanta airport to Auburn, Alabama. Not by a lot, but just maybe by a little bit. So, all right. Other than the beautiful scenery, do we care about literally anything that happened last weekend?
The unavailability. Looks like I'm frozen again.
You're frozen. I can hear you. I'm just going to take you off the screen for a minute, maybe try to add you back on, see if that helps anything. If not, you can exit and come back. Yeah, you are gone. So hopefully you can hear me exit and come back, and I will stall for a couple minutes until you come back in. The short answer is no, we really don't care about anything that happened last weekend. Especially because we now know that Luther Burden is fine. Look, we thought he was fine. We said on Saturday night that he had not left the sideline. We thought that meant he was fine. But official word, I guess not official word, but word from Pete Thamel via sources, which is relatively official, is that Luther's fine. He's going to come back to practice. So that was the only thing, Jarod, I was saying the only thing I might have cared about was that Luther Burden didn't play in the second half. But now that we know he's okay, I really don't care about much of anything else that happened on Saturday. Everything was fine in my book.
Yeah, I was saying before video and stuff cut out, yeah, just unavailability. I mean, Nate Noel being a late scratch. Khalil Jacobs looks like he got a shoulder, arm injury type of deal. And so in my column, I talk a little bit about just comfortability with their depth pieces, who they can expect to see play with some of these injuries or undisclosed reasons for some of the guys being out, like Tristan Newsom and Joe Moore. So, but besides that, as far as just Saturday itself, nothing about the season.
I mean, Nate Noel, like the feeling I got seeing him on the sideline, if that was a game if that was almost any other game, he probably would have played, right?
Yeah. I mean, he was literally like, I probably could stretch my hand out and touch his pads or something, how close they were where I was when I had just got the injury report, and they were doing drills around the upright, doing spin moves and stuff. And he didn't look like anybody who was laboring or anything. So and it wasn't even that we were told, we were told about injury reports like 15 minutes before that. And then it was just kind of, we all noticed, and even some of the Missouri people were just like, we got to figure that out ourselves, actually, like what's going on, because they expected him to play too.
My guess is that was a situation where it was go through warmups and see how you feel. and then we're going to make like, I don't think that, I don't think
Yeah.
they came to the stadium knowing he wasn't going to play.
No. Yeah, I think it was that, and I was thinking, and it was probably like sum it up. It was probably like coach, I can go if you want me to. If you want me to go in, I can play.
Mm-hmm.
If this was Auburn, I'd be playing. But and Drink was probably like, yeah, there's no need to give you 10 to 12 carries anyway. When we should be able to give, Kawan Lacey and Roberts and Carroll some extra carries. So.
Yeah, and I thought it was good to see. Look, I know it was UMass, but Marcus Carroll, 35-yard touchdown, scored 3 times on the day. Like we said a couple weeks ago, there's going to be a day where Marcus Carroll's the guy on this team. And I think there could still be another one. Like he's that's a place where I don't feel like there's a huge difference between 1 and 2. Like there's a different style. Noel might be a better back, but I think Marcus Carroll's a perfectly capable number 1 running back.
He is. People forget 10th leading rusher in the country last year, 1,350 yards, like 13, 14 touchdowns. I know I certainly did before fall camp. We were still thinking he'd be the RB1 going into the season. So it's not like maybe how it's been in some years past. It doesn't really feel like he's an RB2 on this team, but he'd be an RB1 in a lot of different places in the country.
A lot of teams. Yeah. All right. So, and want to encourage you guys, comment, questions. We'll get to them in the chat here as we go along. Got a couple things we want to talk about, but saw this comment that jumped out. We learned that Drew Pine is definitely the backup. Look, I don't think either of us was paying incredibly close attention by the time Drew Pine was in the game. To be quite honest, we were getting ready for postgame and doing other stuff. He was 3 for 5, I think, for 11 yards. But like I have had 2 or 3 people say, if there was something good about Saturday, it was that all these people that are screaming for the backup looked and said, oh, okay, like I get it. Brady's the guy now. I'm not saying Drew Pine looked terrible. I honestly, like I said, I was getting ready for postgame. But it was a little visual aid to what we've been saying all along that, like, look, Brady Cook's going to be the quarterback here. And part of that might be that Drew Pine isn't as good, and people got to look at that on Saturday.
Which is ironic because I was there and I did not get a look at it on Saturday. Mostly because
you were like riding down the elevator getting ready for postgame, I think.
Yeah, so I didn't really see. Well, I know he started the 4th quarter, and I put that in the live updates. But by the 4th quarter, I was starting to try to write my story, get my questions ready for the press conference and all that other stuff. So, like, I didn't see that. I didn't see Will get his first sack. I was just like, oh, stuff that you see on the box score. And then hearing from you on the pod.
All right, so this is a place I want to go before we get to kind of the rest of the SEC and stuff. I wanted to talk a little bit because I wrote a little bit in 10 Thoughts this morning about guys that I think deserve a little more playing time. Mm-hmm. This was not a guy I had listed. Connor says Marcus Clark deserves to play more. I think he had like 8 snaps on Saturday. I mean, Jamarian Wayne played more. Shamar McNeil played ahead of him last week. I don't know that Marcus Clark is a guy that's going to play more, but to me, it seems to me they're searching at corner a little bit. We know Drayden Norwood's going to play. Nick DeLoach is taken about half of Toriano Pride snaps, but we saw some Shamar McNeil last week. We saw some Jamarian Wayne this week. Like, I think they're searching to figure out, hey, we need 4 guys that can play. Do we have 4 guys that can play?
That's the interesting part about these injuries and some of the unavailability. Luckily for them, it's not to their cornerback room. Like, it feels like they can kind of move some things around, kind of finesse a little bit if it's not cornerback. Anything happens to Norwood, even Pride or DeLoach, and those are 2 guys battling for that CB2 role. It seems like they're kind of like, and it's not something that we're just saying. They've told us that multiple times themselves that cornerback is the one position they kind of like trying to figure out what they're going to do depth wise.
And honestly, that makes me kind of think that's almost a spot that, hey, if one of those guys goes down, whatever, put the next guy in. Maybe he's just as like, I don't think they feel comfortable they have a number 2 right now, much less a number 3, 4, or 5. Like, if there was anything that I came out of Saturday saying Mark that down. Man, I don't know about this secondary.
There were,
and I include the safeties in that.
Yeah. I do think, would you put the safeties over the corners? I feel like they still have
Like
that.
bigger concern?
No, as far as like who's playing a little bit better.
Yeah, like I think safety's probably been a little bit better than corner, but like
no, I'm not saying
I'm not sold on safety either.
Yeah. Something interesting. I wonder, could there be a point where maybe they put Trajan Greco back in at corner and just give him a shot? I mean, I know he's been working as a safety, but he came in as a corner, and I mean,
man, I feel like if you get to that point, you are real desperate, and I don't think they're real desperate yet.
I'm just saying, if you're trying to figure out some things or whatever, I mean, I don't think it's unfathomable. He's the only freshman that's played every game. He got his first kind of box score thing, got a tackle for loss last game. And so every time Drink is talking about freshmen, that's the first person he tries to throw in there. So just an option, I guess.
Well, and let's kind of be upfront about it. If we're talking about, okay, we're looking at Jamarian Wayne at his third position, wasn't healthy all of fall camp, or possibly switching back Trajan Greco, true freshman, like none of these are great options, right? Like I think what Missouri has done the last couple of weeks indicates, hey, yeah, we're a little bit worried about corner too. And I think part of the reason they're worried about corner is they're just not getting any pressure, man. So like you need guys to cover for longer. And I think it's a bad combination to have question marks at corner and you're not really getting any heat up front.
All right. Well, with Greco, I'm more so just saying in that CB4-ish area. I'm not saying like play, serious snaps, but just another point as far as depth-wise. But you're right. The pressure not really being there. What do they have? 3 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, I think, which is decent. But in a way, you kind of think versus UMass, you should have a little bit more than that.
Those 3 sacks all came on blitzes. They blitzed 8 times and got 3 sacks. They did not get a sack with a 4-man rush.
It's going to be tough.
That's a problem.
That's a problem. It's going to be tough,
because again, if you can't get pressure with 4, if you're bringing extra guys, then you're leaving somebody one-on-one in the secondary.
Yeah, and I don't know how many of them I would be trusting right now one-on-one consistently.
Do you know, I only know this because I looked it up for a story today. Do you know who leads Missouri in sacks and how many he has?
Yes, it's Chris McClellan with 2.5.
2.5.
Which problem, 2 things. Usually, unless you got a Jalen Carter, a Aaron Donald type of guy,
right.
Defensive tackle. He shouldn't be leading you in sacks unless he's crazy.
Right.
And 2.5 sacks though, like, I mean,
like that's on pace for 5 to lead the team.
Yes, and I think McClellan also leads in tackles for loss with 5 as well. So they're not. So it's like not getting any pass rush, not really getting in the backfield and making as many stops. I mean, now on the flip side, if you want to spin that, defensive tackle lost a lot of guys last year. At least you got one guy to replace one of those 3 who left. But I don't know. You got problems across the whole D line to me.
Well, and this all points to, like, at the end of last year, I think the hope of a lot of people was Darius Robinson's role is just filled by Johnny Walker. That's not happening. It's not going to happen, in my opinion. And I'm not saying but Johnny Walker's terrible or anything, but like we haven't seen anything this year.
Yeah.
I don't remember hearing his name in about 3 weeks.
Hasn't done much. I mean, I feel like I seen something the other day. It was just like, maybe teams are sliding over their stuff a little bit more. Maybe the protections, maybe giving a double. I mean, because if you get to choose one to double, I guess, who's the best pass rusher that was returning? But even then, it's not like I'm seeing that every play and he's getting double. Like they're just not the whole group.
And if you're doubling Johnny Walker, then Where's Zion Young?
That's
Right. Like
what I'm thinking about. And the fact that Joe Moore missed the game, doesn't matter that he missed UMass, but if he has anything that's going to last any further, I remember it was maybe a week or two ago, you were saying, Joe Moore is looking like one of the better pass rushers on this team. And that's for a guy who was DE 4 or 5 last year. Like, I don't know if that's the case, considering it'd be one thing if he was DE 4, DE 5, and he was in a starter to start the year. You're like, okay, he improved that much, but he's only doing well in limited reps. Like, that's still not that great.
If you put him out there for 35 snaps a game, who knows if he's and like he's a situational guy right now. And there's been a lot of heat on Corey Batoon, but like I said a number of times last year, when you can pressure the passer with 4 and you can trust your cornerbacks to kind of man up receivers, defense gets easy. Well, it gets the opposite here. I mean, if you can't get pressure, like, you got to figure out ways to I don't know exactly how you scheme around that. Well, the answer is you figure out ways to blitz and bring pressure from where guys aren't expecting it. So, like, he might have to come up with some new tricks or something.
Well, he's in a catch-22 because if you don't have those playmakers, kind of like you said, you've got to simplify your defense. You can't do as much as you want to do. Like, we're seeing Blake Baker in his second year being able to sprinkle in some more things because all right, I got Robinson who can do this. I've got Walker, even got Niles Gaddy. I think he had 4 sacks last year. And then obviously you got 2 basically number 1 corners. You can do a little bit more. Can't really do that now. So, yeah, you could blitz, but I can see him being like, if we blitz and we don't get there in time, then we're going to get gashed anyway. And it's going to look even worse because that player is going to be open and be able to get rack off of it.
Well, like I wrote this morning in 10 Thoughts, they blitzed 12 times against Texas A&M, and against the blitz, Connor Wegman was 8 of 10 for 141 yards. Like, it wasn't that they didn't blitz; it was that the blitz didn't work.
That's the problem. Like, and here's the thing: that everybody since that game thinks Texas A&M is just a top team, and it's not that they're not. They definitely looked the part that game. But I remember before that game, I don't remember people being sold on Connor Wegman in Texas A&M at all.
Nobody was.
I want to know, and this is just kind of just watching other teams in SEC, is Missouri that bad, or is Connor Wegman actually that good? Like, it.
I think that day was a combination of both. Like, I think they were that bad that day. I don't think they're that bad regularly. But again, like, what passing offense does outside of Bama? Like, yes, Bama can likely make you pay. But other than that, like, who scares you on this schedule throwing the football is the thing. I mean, Peyton Thorne can. He's also going to throw about 3 to you and see if you catch him.
I'm not.
Oklahoma has no quarterback and no receivers.
What
Arkansas, Taylor Green sometimes.
Well, he's another dual threat thing. I mean, it seems like their whole schedule is just dual threat quarterbacks. What about Van Buren from Mississippi State? He put three on Georgia. I don't know if Mississippi State's good. I just seen that. I was just like 300 yards Georgia. Now, I'm guessing Georgia was probably sleepwalking a little bit during that game.
I think that was a Georgia, we're going to do exactly as much as we have to do game. I could be wrong. I watched 0 seconds of it. But
yeah, I just know they're playing Texas this week. So, like, they could just be kind of like, all right, let's just get out of here, without injury. So, you're right. There may not be teams that can scare Missouri passing-wise, but I don't know. They have to be able to stop the run because that's the next thing. If you can't stop the run, then anybody can pass on you.
Right. And like you said, Texas A&M didn't scare us passing before Texas A&M scared you passing, So, all right, we got a little sidetracked on that and wanted to get to so Connor had brought up Marcus Clark. So give me a couple guys on this team that like you think have earned a longer look, have earned, I'm not saying necessarily have to start, that you're benching somebody, but deserve maybe a few more snaps in the next few weeks.
Joshua Manning probably should start. Like, it's getting to the point of negligence and
Okay, I don't care if he starts, but I think he should have more snaps.
Absolutely. And you're right. It shouldn't matter if he starts, but I do think, yes, he should be that type of guy and give him some more, late game situations where he has a chance to be that number 3 guy because he gets open, he makes plays. He had a Theo Weiss moment. Remember versus Florida when Theo caught that screen and took about 76, 77 yards, and we were all like, okay, Theo, got a little bit more speed than we thought. That's kind of how I felt when Josh took that pass from the flat and took it 63 yards. So, yeah, he's one guy. Another guy, and this is kind of partially due to injuries, or it's 2 of them, and they're both linebackers, Jeremiah Beasley and Nick Rodriguez. Nick, his high school huddle tape, he looks like a tackling machine. You know it then. And he proved that, I know it's UMass, but he still did some good work. And then I just keep thinking about, 1, Beasley's the second guy to burn his red shirt, and 2, how high Corey Flagg was on him after the game, and Drink has been high on him as well. So just a couple of young guys who can get action if Tristan Newson and Khalil Jacobs are unavailable going forward.
Yeah, and they may be forced into action. I echo Manning. I think Corey Flagg should be getting more snaps.
I'm thinking
you can argue.
Okay, yeah.
No, I mean, but both ways. But you can argue he's been Missouri's best defensive player this year. I think we would agree it's either him or Chris McClellan, and whichever order you want to put him in, I'm fine with.
Yeah, it's a coin flip depending on what you want to look at. I was just naming young guys. Corey Flagg, absolutely. He's their best linebacker, and I just looked it up a little bit ago. He's the most productive, leading the team in tackles, but he has the least amount of snaps out of the top 4 linebackers. He has 120. I think Chuck Hicks has about 155, 166. So it's not that much a difference in snaps, but still, for him to have 36 less snaps and him to be leading the team in tackles and have an interception and some of the other stuff he's doing, probably should be getting more. But he'll likely start if Tristan Newson is not around anyway, because he can play Mike and Will.
Yeah, that's the deal. And we don't know about Newson. I mean, we'll ask tomorrow and be told to wait for the injury report. Did they actually ever say why Tristan Newson didn't play? Did they tell anybody what was wrong with him?
I literally asked right before I seen, Noel practices in front of me. I was just like, they sent us the injury report and we said, why? And this just said, we can't tell you why, he's just out. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, all right. That's all I can do.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what we find out, tomorrow and then more on Wednesday, because we're full SEC games now. So every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the rest of the year, we are getting injury reports, and we'll have, for whatever they're worth, we'll have updates throughout the week. I do want to remind you guys real quick, we're about the halfway point. Again, we're bringing Brandon Marcello on at 7:45, but want to remind you guys to get in touch with our friend James Carlton at State Farm Insurance in Webster Groves. You can do that. CarltonInsurance.net, 314-961-4800. He's also got a Facebook page at Carlton Insurance. And if you go to CarltonInsurance.net, you figure out how to email him, send him a letter, telegram, however you want to get in touch with him. Just get in touch with James. Get a quote. He's going to make a donation to the NIL efforts, and he's probably going to save you a lot of money on your insurance rates, to be quite honest. So I encourage you to do that. So, all right, this is where we need to go, because Auburn's coming to town. Booth and Tobacco says, if we lose to Auburn, I'm hitting the panic button. I mean, fair, in my opinion.
Yeah. We haven't talked to Drink yet. I haven't looked at anything related to Auburn yet. So besides their record, which I believe is 2-4, I'm not going to act like I know too much about them. But so I got Missouri in my mind thinking they should win this game, but haven't really been playing to that standard where I can just automatically count things as wins anymore.
And look, in the SEC, and we'll talk about this in a minute, in the SEC, I'm not sure there's an automatic win on anybody's schedule outside of maybe Mississippi State, but Auburn is they're 2-4. They haven't beaten a power conference team. They're 0-4 against power conference teams. They've been in every game, they just make just enough mistakes to get beat. Like they had Oklahoma beat and threw a pick six that flipped that game around. They got beat 31-13 by Georgia last weekend.
But they were in that game for at least the first half, though, I believe.
Yeah, they were in that game for a while. They got beat 24-14 by Arkansas, got beat, I think, by a touchdown by Cal. Like, they're in every game. They just haven't been able to make plays to win games. So, but I literally think, like, everything from 11-1 to 6-6 is on the table for me, for Missouri. Like, I'm not kidding. And I think this weekend goes a long way toward determining which way I lean.
You can't really believe they'd go 6-6 though. Like, currently constructed.
Let me paint you the picture. And am I predicting this? No. Let's say they lose this weekend.
Okay.
5-2. They go to Bama, have another A&M performance, get blown out. 5-3. Guys start going, this is dumb. What are we doing? I'm not bought in. Oklahoma shows up. Oklahoma still got guys. You're 5-4. You go to South Carolina. What are you even playing for? You probably get one against Mississippi State. So that puts you 6-5. So you can go play in the Mayo Bowl and dump a bowl of mayo on Drinkwitz after the game. But then you're 6-5. Improved Arkansas coming at the end of the year. Tired of hearing about how they can't belong on the same field as Missouri. They win the game. There's your 6-6. I think this is the second easiest game left on the schedule. And if you lose this one, I think absolutely everything's on the table.
I hear what you're saying. That it makes sense.
Momentum's real, man.
Oh, trust me, I'm a believer. But this team is still talented enough. Like, here's what I can't get about this team is they're still putting up points. It just feels like there's something missing, but they're right there. It's not like a steep drop off, but they're not doing whatever that thing is. So it's hard for me to think Auburn, South Carolina, whose best win is what, Akron or something. I don't know. Like, I can't see.
South Carolina whooped Kentucky. South Carolina should have won at Alabama last week. They should have.
Yeah.
They had the ball. They were going for a 2-point conversion to tie the game. Didn't get it. Got an onside kick. Needed about 25 yards for a game-winning field goal and didn't get it.
I'm not saying South Carolina is – they can't – I would say that is more of a game that Missouri can lose than this one. I'm just finding it hard that it's like they're this good that it's just like easy. Missouri goes to that Columbia and they just lose. I don't know if it's like that for me.
Well, I'm not saying they definitely lose. I'm just saying if you lose this weekend, like right now, what Missouri has going for it is everything's still on the table. Like there's a very clear path to the playoff, all that. If you lose this weekend, that's done. You're finished. You can't go. And what does that do to this team that has put – I mean, it's the same thing we've been saying about Ole Miss and that my friend Neil McCready wrote a couple weeks ago. If everything you're playing for is now gone, how do a bunch of 20-year-old kids react? They might mail it in. Like you can't pretend that possibility doesn't exist.
Here's what I will say. Yeah, if they get to about loss 3, yeah, you're right. Loss 2, with how weird things are going and how some of these teams have lost. I'm not saying it doesn't help other teams who are undefeated or who have those one loss. I'm just saying it's not a complete it's over just because we've already seen a lot of funny things and it's only halfway through the year.
It's over unless you win in Tuscaloosa. You lose this weekend, it's over unless you go down and win at Bama. And even then, it might be over.
Nah, I think A&M is proven to be pretty decent. That will help them. Like if you get beaten by a team that's clearly better than you in the top 15. Vanderbilt is proving to be all right. I don't know if I'm saying good yet. They've got to show more, I guess. But like you've got that going for you. So you can live if you lose to Auburn, but you get it back on the road at Alabama.
It's possible. But my point is don't lose this game. Like you lose this game, you start talking about some dark paths.
Yeah, things get things get a little cloudy after that. So
exactly. All right, so let's talk for a minute about the SEC. You do a thing with I don't know, 16 other guys, 15 other guys, whatever, in the 24/7 network where you guys do power rankings in the league every week. Texas #1. I don't think there's any disputing that, right? Like, did Texas get every first place vote?
correct.
Okay. No disputing that. You had Georgia #2. Is there anybody else you considered at #2?
I considered LSU. I mean, they lost to USC in the opener, but then they've just kind of been putting it together. I mean, that win versus Ole Miss, like that's something I actually got to watch some of that game while doing my work. And so Nussmeier, he had 2 great passes to me at one at the end of regulation to basically tie the game with the PAT after. And then they had one to Kyron Lacey to win the game in overtime. And so I think LSU is really good. I don't think they're better than Georgia or even Alabama, but if we're just doing power rankings of teams that are looking good and stuff like that, I consider them for a second.
Okay, so if Texas is a clear #1, is there anybody else separate from the pack? Because I can make an argument that from 2 to about 15 in the SEC, I don't know, just depends on the day, man.
Are you talking about if they like just played each other or whatever? Or
yeah, if they're playing each other, like
yeah,
I can make an argument on any given day. 15 might beat 2, and 7 might lose to 3, and who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you. We've already kind of seen a little bit of that this year anyway. So
right, it's kind of proven by the fact that, let's see, you had Kentucky 14, right? They lost to Georgia by a point. And Georgia's 2. And I'm not arguing that Georgia probably should be 2 and Kentucky probably should be 14. But I think the SEC is a microcosm of college football. Like, I look and I see 3 teams in the country that I go, yeah, I can see that team winning a national title without much trouble. I might put Georgia in as #4, but I just haven't seen. It's kind of like we're saying about Missouri. I think Missouri should be better than it has been, but we're 6 games into the season and I haven't seen it. With Georgia, I saw it against Clemson, and honestly, since then, I haven't really seen it.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Who are your other 2 teams along with Texas?
Oregon and Ohio State.
Okay, just checking.
I think Ohio State's still the second most talented team in the country, and Oregon just beat them. So,
yeah. Okay, we're on the same accord. And then you said you'd add Georgia 4th. Well, in a way, it's like you feel like you got to put Alabama, but Alabama's invincibility to me is a little. It's not.
I think the difference between Georgia and Alabama is, I think Alabama had its best day on the right day. Like the rest of the season hasn't been much. I think Georgia has the look of a team just going, yeah, let's save it for the big games. We got 4 of them, and let's save it for that. And it burned them against Alabama a little bit.
And my thing is, even though they were getting their butts whooped, they took the lead with about 2 minutes left in the game. So, like, but obviously they were getting their butts whooped for so long. The instant thought is Alabama whooped them boys. They did, but then they were getting whooped. They're getting beat up a little bit themselves. So, yeah, Georgia is definitely that #2 team for me in the SEC.
All right, so in the SEC, if there's Texas and then a little bit of a gap, like, where's the next gap? Is it after Georgia? Is it after Alabama at 4? Where's your next kind of, all right, I feel like there's another half step down here?
So we go Texas, Texas.
And then it goes Georgia, LSU, Bama, or 2, 3.
Yeah, I would still group Bama in there, but they're at the bottom of that second ranking. Then after that, I don't have like Tennessee, Texas A&M. They're in that next kind of like they're outside the club. They're outside the club waiting to get in. That's what they look like. Tennessee has been struggling versus unranked teams the last couple of weeks, and it's kind of just like the offense isn't looking like the stats are saying, So I'm kind of wary of them.
I would put Texas A&M for now in the group with Georgia, Bama, and
You don't got LSU there?
I'm not sure. They're 5 to me. Because they've won, but like they won a game against Ole Miss they had no business winning. They won a game against South Carolina. They trailed most of the day. They lost to USC. To me, they're below those. Like if I'm drawing a line, I might go Georgia, Bama, A&M, and then draw a line. But LSU could kind of sneak in there. But I think that line is clearly right before. Then that next group for me is Tennessee, Missouri, Ole Miss, and that's like tier 2.5 or whatever in the SEC.
Yeah.
You put anybody else in there? Like does Vandy get in that tier?
No.
Okay.
They're doing well, but just a little bit of caution with that. As far as Missouri, they're in a weird spot for me because, I would group them with Tennessee and A&M. They would be at the bottom of that. I would group them with
Tennessee and Ole Miss. Or do you have Ole Miss lower?
Oh, Ole Miss losing that second game. I guess you could put Ole Miss still in there, but it doesn't really matter. I think they've really shot themselves in the foot with this second.
Well, I mean, like they can't get to – they're almost impossible to get to the playoff. But I would argue, like, Ole Miss losing a game by a field goal to LSU and a field goal to Kentucky, it's not worse than Missouri no-showing against A&M. Like, it's 2 losses, not 1, but they haven't had a no-show.
I haven't had a no-show, but sounds like 2 games you should have closed also.
It's fair.
So, I mean.
And that's tier 2.5 to me is like LSU, Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee. They're all like, I don't know that those are playoff teams, but we can't write them off.
Yeah, Missouri, again, they're in that tier with them, but they don't look the eye test part of it, if that makes sense. And they're in there, but they have a couple more bad outings, and I'm not even counting Alabama. They just have more shaky outings. They may have to drop a tier after that.
All right, so here's my next tier. Buckle up. It's going to take a minute. This is not necessarily in order. This is just the order you voted him in. But my next tier 3, 4, whatever we're at, is Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Arkansas, South Carolina, Florida, Kentucky, and Auburn. Okay. I would literally just put them all in the same group.
Mississippi State.
Mississippi State in a group of its own. They're bad. They don't get to be in the group with anybody else. They're in what has in previous years been the Vandy tier.
Okay. So everybody. Okay, so we got, you said Vandy pretty much to whoever I had 15, which is
Vandy to Auburn. Yeah.
Okay.
All those teams are the same to me.
Yeah, they're pretty interchangeable. I think so.
Like if they played 10-game series against each other, I think they would just all go 5-5.
I think there's some fluctuation within that. I think there's an upper part of that and a bottom part of that. But for the most part, I do think they all could beat each other multiple times in like whatever series you want to do. But I don't know if it'd be straight 5-5, but I get what you're saying.
I mean, it'd be in the area. Like you have Vandy 9. I think that's fair. I actually, when I ranked Missouri's remaining games, I put Arkansas above Oklahoma as a tougher game. I think
and
right now Arkansas looks like a better football team to me than Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I even wrote that, like, for people who do have that, I'm not going to argue because the common opponent was like Tennessee, and they got the win over Tennessee. I'm just, me personally, and this may be still going on to preseason to early season, like is Arkansas for real kind of thing. It was more so of that for me, more than if they deserved it or not. So I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah. So I think we've got 4 tiers. We've got a Texas tier, then we've got the Bama, Georgia, LSU, A&M tier, and then we've got the Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee tier.
Then we got the rest, and then we got Mississippi. So
we got everybody else, and then Mississippi State's in tier 5. Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah, that's. I think that's all. But the point is, kind of like everything else. I mean, And it's why it's why talking about what's going to happen for the next 6 weeks is so ridiculous, because like I look at every team's schedule and go, yeah, I could see 5-1 or 1-5. Like the only team, even Texas, like they have Georgia and A&M. Like I can see 10-2 for them. I don't think they'll be worse than that, but I could see 10-2 and it wouldn't shock me.
Right. And interesting enough,
and if they go 10-2, the best thing they've done is beat a Michigan team that's not very good.
Right. I think it was Ross Dellinger. He wrote something about teams that kind of still have a shot. It was like 20 teams, something like, and he kind of ranked them by clearly still got a chance, need some help, all that stuff. And he mentioned stuff about like how there's some games coming up that are elimination games in a way. Yeah. So like Tennessee versus
Alabama, Tennessee.
Yeah, there you go. Like whoever loses that the next week, Alabama, Missouri. I don't know if that's complete elimination, but it puts someone in deep trouble. If both those teams are 6-1, 6-1 going into that game. So that's also something interesting. So yeah, all this talk we're doing, and some of these teams could start falling off in a couple weeks, and we're not even mentioning a Tennessee or Texas A&M or Missouri or whatever the case may be.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have, if anything's been proven the last 3 weeks, nobody has any clue. And like Bill says, the focus on the playoffs is futile. Absolutely it is. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Right. And that's why, again, I just go back to, I don't think you can overstate how big this Auburn game. Like, I don't care if you win by 9 or 90 or 1 or 100, but you lose this game, man. And you could go a bunch of different directions and they're not necessarily good.
Yeah. I don't know. It'd really be a David and Goliath situation if you got 2 losses and you're going into Alabama, who probably I would say this, Alabama is probably starting to feel everybody coming at them and their backs are becoming against the wall. And that sounds good in one aspect. You may be able to get them. In the other aspect, it's like it's still Alabama, and with their backs against the wall, I don't know if I want to face that.
Right. That's the thing. Like you can't be going to Bama going, hey, if we lose at Alabama, we know it's over. Like that's a bad place to be. It's why we talked about the A&M game being so huge. Right. And like after you got beat at A&M, this Auburn game became bigger because now you can't. And I'm not even talking about for the playoff. If you're going to have the season you want to have, you can't lose to this Auburn team.
Right. And on top of that, here's like the best worst case scenario. Missouri goes 10-2, they lose to Alabama, and they put it in the hands of the committee. See, at least with that, you have an out. Oh man, the committee, blah, 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 blah. You make the choice for them. It's on you.
Right. All right. Real quick before Brandon gets here in a couple minutes, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you care that Hugh Freeze said this week that he gives Eli Drinkwitz credit for being a really good coach with a lesser roster?
Lesser roster than who? Or just compared to last
year? I retweeted it. It was a Michael Casagrande tweet. I'll find it for you in just a minute.
Hugh.
Yeah, like Hugh just
that just shaped my. They're gonna lose by like 14 plus.
Here's Michael Casagrande's tweet. Hugh Freeze comments on the good coaching jobs done, quote, with those lesser rosters. He includes coaches at Missouri, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. Like,
okay. Here's the problem.
You don't say that the week you play Missouri.
Not only is, first off, Missouri's going to feel doubly offended. 1, lesser roster. 2, who did you just group me with? Like, you're a funny guy. They're going to lose by 14 plus now. They have to. That's what Missouri should be saying. We got to beat them down.
Eli Drinkwitz should have that comment posted on every wall. Like, I am not a huge bullet. Like, I think coaches often overblow the bulletin board material. Andrew, thanks for the super chat. And Jarod earlier. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, have we gone a week this year where we haven't said, hey, let's talk about the dumb thing Hugh Freeze said this week? He just keeps doing it, man.
Man, he's off the wall. But I mean, whatever. I mean, he better back it up. I mean, I don't know why he's 2-4 talking like that. Part of me is just like, I admire
and
that.
I'm not sure he was talking about his own team. Like on one hand, I get a little bit what he was saying, which is, hey, these coaches who maybe the recruiting rankings don't say their teams should be this good, but like Eli Drinkwitz's recruiting rankings the last few years actually do say his team should be about this good.
Maybe he's saying these are good coaches playing in the toughest league, and they're not blue blood programs, so they're not getting the best players. Hence, they are doing a better job with less. But he would have had to explain that a lot more detailed than how he said it, and prefaced it with a lot of different other comments. So anyway, Missouri, if you don't win by 14, I don't know. Now I'm looking at Missouri like, you got to defend yourself. You got to do something.
All right. So on that note, we're going to bring our guests in tonight. We got Brandon Marcello, national college football writer for 24/7 and CBS Sports. Also spent 7 years covering the Auburn Tigers pre Hugh Freeze sticking his foot in his mouth every single week era. Brandon, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. That's a good way to put it.
So we were just talking like 1 to 10, Missouri should be how offended that Hugh decided this was the right time to say Eli Drinkwitz is doing a nice job with a lesser roster like Vandy in Kentucky.
That's what he said.
I will read you. I just read this tweet to Jarod too. Michael Casagrande tweeted the video. Hugh Freeze comments on the good coaching jobs done with, quote, those lesser rosters. He includes coaches at Missouri, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. This is the week Hugh chose to say this.
Why is he saying that type of? I'm starting to wonder. Like, is Hugh Freeze like aware there's a microphone in front of him after games and at press conferences? For that matter?
This was apparently in his opening statement at his press. Like, wasn't even asked a question. This was just part of his opening statement.
Well, we'll see. We'll see Saturday, I guess.
Gabe, didn't we say a couple weeks ago that like maybe in the past Drink may have been saying a lot more things in his first couple of years to protect his team, so not everybody's focusing on the performance of his team.
Yeah.
What if he is trying to pull that with his 2-4 record or something like that?
What if Hugh's out here? Is Hugh Freeze out here playing chess? Is that what we're asking?
Well, he's certainly already got a lot of heat on himself. I don't know why he'd want to keep directing it to himself. It just seems like he's gone about a lot of things the wrong way this season, throwing some players under the bus early in the year. Now allegedly saying that. I haven't seen it yet. I need to see the comments and the context of it, but that just doesn't sound good at face value.
Yeah, he just needs to play Arkansas 9 more times. We'd win 9 games. So Brandon again covers national college football for 24/7 at CBS. Just look, we had a lot of people on our first day, and we want to give you guys some exposure to what this network is going to do for you and all that. Brandon, it kind of ask you just big picture, your thoughts on Missouri at the midway point versus what you maybe thought they'd be coming into the year.
I expected more. I expected them not to allow some folks to hang around with them. I know Vanderbilt's better than a lot of us were expecting, but I was not very impressed with the performance against Vanderbilt by Mizzou earlier this year. They allowed Boston College, obviously, to kind of hang around and get back into that game. And then, of course, the Texas A&M game, just a complete no-show from the show-me state, so to speak, that left me flabbergasted for a lot of reasons. They've got to be able to live up to their potential, especially at the skill positions at receiver. They're so much better than a lot of teams out there at those spots, and they've got to get that together. The good thing is they've got a schedule as such, especially with UMass this past week and now with Auburn, where they can, quote-unquote, work out kinks, get some confidence back in them a little bit, because they're much better than their record shows right now and much better than where they are in the rankings, but they just got to put that together. I also wonder, is there any semblance of maybe missing something at running back, obviously from last season? It's very hard to replicate. Maybe there's a little bit too much pressure on Brady Cook to perform at all times, but obviously Mizzou's not completely out of this thing anyway in the new 12 playoff game era, 12 team era. But the things they're putting on paper and on film every week, that leaves me scratching my head at times.
Well, Gabe, now I kind of got a question to kind of bounce off Brandon's point. So what do you think it is? Do you think it's about running back? Is there too much pressure on Brady? I mean, what do you think is kind of that thing that's whatever this mental block is or whatever's relating to them not playing well? What do you think could be one of those reasons for it?
I wonder if everybody's on the same page at all times offensively. I know a lot of people were paying attention, making a big deal about the A&M game and people, quote unquote, pouting on the sideline and everything. But you got to know how to respond in situations like that on the road. When things go wrong, you got to be able to make things right yourself. It's not on anybody else other than yourself to get it done. But I do think there's probably a lot more pressure on Brady Cook this season than there was last year to deliver in that offense. But he's got the weapons around him to make that come together. It's just that, again, everybody's got to get on the same page and be willing to pull out full effort at all times.
Hey, Brandon, you've probably paid a little more attention to Auburn so far this year than we have, but my 30,000-foot view of Auburn is, I mean, Eli Drinkwitz is going to tell us they're better than their 2-4 record. They probably are better than their 2-4 record. They just seem to find ways to lose games. I mean, like, they're in every game. They just haven't won any games except the ones that don't count.
Yeah, I mean, they got obviously issues at quarterback, but their biggest issue is offensive line. It is what it is at this point. They can't fix it. They're just not very good up front in pass protection. And when you have a mediocre to below average quarterback in Peyton Thorne, or if you start a Hank Brown at freshman, the issue there is that you got a bad offensive line. It's going to make that person look worse than they actually are. And the truth of the matter is that Auburn doesn't have a great quarterback to begin with. So I know a lot of people kind of go, well, Auburn should have went out and the transfer portal and got a quarterback. Well, maybe so. Yeah, sure. It would have made them better. How much better? I'm not sure. I'm not so sure about that offensive line as a result. But also, as you mentioned, like, they make mistakes and they shoot themselves in the foot. And it seems like it's always at the most inopportune times, whether it was that pick six. Listen, Peyton Thorne was playing a pretty good game and then throws a pick six. And then all of a sudden it's downhill in the fourth quarter and they lose to OU. This is a team that should be better, and they're not from last season. They're actually worse than they were last season. And that's something that Auburn fans don't want to hear about, obviously. But, what's fascinating to me, not necessarily is what is going to happen with Auburn on the field this year. I just wonder if they're going to be able to hold their recruiting classes together here in the future, because that's where they've really put everything, all their effort into, Hugh Freeze included, in the last year and a half, is to try to get top 5 recruiting classes. And they've been doing that. But here, as we get loaded later in the season, November, December, those losses start to pile up. You wonder if some of those kids might decide to defect or look elsewhere, reopen their recruitment. Hugh Freeze made it very clear when he got hired there to the administration, listen, we've got to figure out a way to build up this thing with high school recruiting, complement it with the transfer portal. But his number one job was to recruit. He told them that, and it was going to take a little bit in this new era. And I think we can probably fairly judge Hugh Freeze and the job he's doing there at this time next year in year 3, which no one wants to hear because you want it in the microwave oven, right? You want to pop it in, pop it out with the portal. But that was his plan going in, and they hired him knowing that plan. So this is what you're getting right now. But I expected them to be better at this point in the year.
Brandon, what would be the way for Auburn? I mean, I feel like I understand part of what the answer would be, but what do you think would be the 1 or 2 ways that they could come into Columbia and get a victory?
Run the ball effectively and don't turn the ball over. I got enough confidence in their defense to be able to slow Mizzou down in some crucial moments potentially, but they've got to commit to the run and be able to run the ball effectively. They cannot put Peyton Thorne in a position where he's got to deliver on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 every time they're on the field on a drive. They've got to be able to run the ball to have a shot, I believe, against the Mizzou Tigers, the other Tigers.
Right. I hate games like this because I can't never just type the Tigers. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. So we were talking right before you came on, kind of looking at the entire SEC. I mean, we broke it into a few tiers. Texas is kind of on its own tier right now. Georgia might be on its own tier right after that. But like literally, I look at the SEC and I go 2 through 15. Right now, if I have Georgia 2 and Auburn 15 or Kentucky 15, on any given day, man, I don't know. Like, I don't think there's the least separation I've seen in this league. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think you're seeing more of that also just across college football on the power level, Big Ten included, Big 12 definitely. There's more talent than ever in the SEC and in the Big Ten, but it's more spread out than ever because of the portal. Also, as we've seen, you might be able to add 5- and 4-star guys in the transfer portal at a blue blood program, but it doesn't necessarily all gel together. You know, you're trying to learn on the fly with your new teammates in week 3, week 4, and that's not necessarily conducive for a winning formula. You know, and it's a volatile situation. I look at Florida State. I mean, I thought and probably still think that Mike Norvell, out of all the coaches out there, is probably doing the best job as far as just balancing high school recruiting with the transfer portal. He wasn't overloading on portal guys, but then they lose all that talent they had last year, and they had in a hurry, like, add a bunch of guys they needed to play immediately through the portal, and it's blown up in their face this season after it working so well the previous 2 years with that plan. So it's hot or cold. It's hit or miss out there. You might think you got a great team because of the portal, and then all of a sudden it blows up in your face and things aren't coming together. But again, I say that to say this, that the disparity among the power conference teams, the chasm is not a chasm anymore. It's just small little cracks, and anybody can really beat anybody. And I know people want to point at Vanderbilt as an example for that, but heck, I look at like a Rutgers right now, for example, even a Northwestern this past week that went on the road and beat Maryland by double digits. You're seeing results like this in the middle and bottom half of the conferences that you kind of go, no one's really paying attention to, but you're like, Northwestern went on the road and won by double digits? Where'd that come from? It's because of those type of situations. And also, it seems like this year, maybe more than I've realized, is that turnovers seem to be like contagious for some of these teams that are trying to break in new guys. And you're seeing teams all of a sudden go from 2 turnovers to 4 turnovers in games. And you have no shot at winning a game if you have 4 turnovers, unless there's your Indiana, which is crazy to say, but I'm really high on Indiana. They won a game earlier this year, guys, turning the ball over 4 times and losing the turnover battle, I think 4-0, and they still won by double digits in a conference game in the Big Ten. I think that shows to me they're a little bit more legit than maybe people are leading on. But I think there's a great point there about the talent disparity is not as wide as people seem to believe.
Brandon, we were just talking about which team's resume looks like it's the best or worst. When we talked about, Mizzou has that loss to Texas A&M. Ole Miss has a couple of 1-score losses to Kentucky and LSU, games they probably should have won. And then you even go back to Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois. So if they're all kind of bunched up in that middle area towards the end of the year, when you're looking at the resumes, and let's just say they all, do well, where do you, if they all go, I guess, 10-2, where do you kind of rank those teams, and which team has the best resume?
Ole Miss is an interesting situation because if they go 10-2, that means they beat Georgia at home. Right. And that maybe puts them in position at that point to make the SEC championship game over Georgia, having won against them with a tiebreaker. So that puts them in a great spot. Then all of a sudden you're thinking, if Ole Miss gets in the SEC championship game with 2 losses and loses to Texas, so to speak, they have 3 losses, and then maybe Georgia's sitting at home just with 2 losses. The committee might have a decision to make there. Do you put Georgia in over Ole Miss, or do you put both of them in and maybe frustrate some other people in power conferences? I think Notre Dame's in the best position out of all those teams just because their schedule's a little bit easier, but it's also helped by Army and Navy being undefeated right now.
Yeah.
And USC's falling off a little bit, but that's still going to be a win that they could kind of put their feather in their cap a little bit. But Army and Navy all of a sudden really helps their resume. They've got to win out, I think, Notre Dame, because their schedule is quote unquote weaker than a lot of folks right now. But that's something to really keep an eye on. It's going to be fascinating to see what level of a 3-loss team gets in the playoff, because we're going to get one. We're going to get at least one 3-loss team in there. And is it going to be from the Big Ten, or is it going to be from the SEC? I tend to think it's probably going to be in the SEC based off of strength of schedule alone right now, because what you're seeing in the Big Ten, it's hurting them. is that these teams that are having to travel 2 time zones away, they're 3-10 when they have to play those games. This actually was the best week for those teams. Penn State rallying at USC to help get the feather in their cap. But you can be a greater team and go on the road 2 time zones away and then lose, and that hurts the strength of schedule of the entire conference in some ways, and then definitely yours. So the SEC, because it's more of a regional conference, they don't have to worry about that. And I think it's going to help them here potentially getting that 3-loss team in.
College football 2024, where Florida and Oklahoma are in the same region, no question. All right, so I was going to ask you about a 3-loss team, so I'm going to finish you with this. Just if I set the over/under on undefeated teams at the end of the regular season, power conference teams at the end of the regular season at 1/2, are you taking the over or the under?
Power conference teams?
Yeah, power conference teams. Basically, does anybody get through this regular season in a power conference without a loss?
Yeah, I'd take the under on 1.5. I think it'll probably maybe just be 1.
Would you take the under at 1/2 though?
Yeah,
at 0.5.
No.
Okay, you think?
I think
Oregon?
there will. No.
well, I was thinking he was going to say Texas, but I guess I don't. It's a good one too.
It might
Texas
be Miami.
Might not have
It might be Miami.
Oh, okay.
Their
Charmed
schedules they could. You know, they had to go to Cal and rally the way they did, 3 time zones away. Maybe Miami. They've got it all, really. And I know people look at these last 2 games with them and go, but I think it's them potentially coming out of the fray with that. We'll learn so much more about Texas this week, obviously. I still don't think they've played anybody who can kind of keep up with them at all. And we know what Michigan is now, just an absolute one-dimensional dumpster fire offensively. But yeah, if I had to hedge my bets right now, I'd say that one team will be Miami that's undefeated.
Perfect. Well, Brandon, appreciate you, man. Looking forward to being on the same team with all you guys and getting to talk to you down the road.
All right. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the week.
Appreciate it.
Have a good one. That is Brandon Marcello, 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports, national college football writer. So we want to kind of bring in some other perspectives. You guys get probably tired of hearing Jarod and I ramble on for an hour, so we get somebody else in here for 20 minutes and make it a little easier. What do you think, man? Miami undefeated.
Wasn't what I was expecting, but when he says it, I'm trying to think of who would they even have left.
Yeah, I'd have to look at their schedule. I'm not sure.
And I wonder if they play Clemson sometime down the line.
I don't think they play Clemson during the regular season.
I know I, of course, looked at their schedule right before the season started. Maybe they had Florida State on there, and that looked like I was a ranked team or whatever. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, they've got – so they're at Louisville this week. Then they host Florida State, Duke at Georgia Tech, Wake Forest at Syracuse.
Oh, yeah, they can sweep it. They can sweep it.
So, yeah, I think Louisville this weekend is their toughest.
Yeah, this is the last – it's the last test.
I'd still say Oregon has an excellent shot. After they won that Ohio State game, I think Oregon has a good shot.
I think Oregon plays Michigan later. But that's probably not going to matter.
I don't think Michigan's any good. Oregon has Purdue, Illinois, Michigan, Maryland, Wisconsin, Washington. I think Oregon's
Purdue, Illinois, Michigan,
Maryland, Wisconsin, Washington. I think they're going 12-0.
Yeah. Okay. Oh well, that could be 2 teams. You got Oregon, Miami.
Could be.
Texas, I think they beat Georgia. I don't know if they are beating Georgia though. That's the thing though. I don't know if I'm doing.
I don't think anybody gets through the SEC undefeated. So, all right, guys, we'll have plenty more on Mizzou Auburn all week long. I know we're going to talk with our guys from the Auburn 24/7 site later in the week. I'll have a podcast, Jarod, and those guys are going to trade some content and trade some message board chats and all that. All the regular stuff coming up this week. So while you're here, like, comment, share, subscribe, do all those things on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, share it on social media, say nice things. And as always, check out our buddy James Carlton at Carlton State Farm Insurance. That is carltoninsurance.net. Get them by phone at 314-961-4800. James just wanted to save you some money, talk a little Mizzou football with you. maybe make a donation to NIL if you get a quote from him. So make sure you get that done. We will be all over the message boards all week long. So hang out with us, Missouri and Auburn, 11 a.m. on Saturday. We'll talk to you next time.